The moment Catherine Waverly laid eyes on the necklace, time seemed to stop. A glass of wine paused midway to her lips, frozen in midair, as her gaze locked on the delicate crescent moon pendant, resting just below Jader's collarbone. Etched into the gold was a single familiar initial, L. Her son, 16-year-old Chase, grinned proudly beside her. "Mom, Dad, this is Jader." Jader offered a gentle smile, her voice calm yet steady despite the thick tension in the room. "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Waverly." But Catherine couldn't answer. Her eyes were trapped, frozen on the necklace. Robert Waverly, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat, forcing the conversation forward. "And how did you two meet?" "At the Lincoln Shelter," Chase replied quickly. "She teaches coding to younger kids. That's where I volunteer." "Amazing," Robert murmured, smiling faintly, though his eyes flickered toward the pendant. Catherine finally blinked, setting her untouched glass down. "Excuse me," she said, rising slowly, her voice brittle, almost cold. "I'll be back in a moment." She left the room, hand reaching beneath her blouse, touching her own hidden necklace. Something was terribly, profoundly wrong. In the master suite, Catherine unlocked her jewelry box with trembling fingers. Beneath layers of pearls and diamonds lay a necklace, nearly identical to the one Jader wore, a crescent moon with the same single letter, L. She hadn't seen it in nearly 20 years. Downstairs, the room was quiet, but the air was heavy with unspoken tension. Jader sipped water quietly, while Chase rattled on about her interests in AI and robotics, about her plans to apply to Columbia. Robert raised an eyebrow, impressed, but his gaze kept returning to the necklace. "That's a beautiful piece," he said. "Family heirloom?" Jader looked down. "Actually, no. I don't know where it came from. I grew up in foster care. The necklace was the only thing found with me as a baby." The room froze. Robert exchanged a glance with the empty doorway where Catherine had disappeared. In the bathroom, Catherine pressed her hands under cold running water, fighting to steady herself. Memories she had buried for decades surged forward. The rain, the screaming, the terrible decision that had haunted her every day since. And now, this girl was wearing the necklace. Downstairs, Chase watched Jader recount a story about one of her coding students who accidentally triggered a robot to spin endlessly. "We had to unplug the entire panel," she said, laughing nervously. Robert smiled politely, but inside he was reeling. He had seen that necklace once before, wrapped in a blood-soaked blanket in a hospital. Catherine returned, calm but cold as porcelain. She took her seat, masking the storm raging inside. Chase noticed, asking lightly, "Everything okay?" "Of course," she said, her voice steady. Then, turning to Jader, she asked flatly, "Have you ever tried to trace your birth?" Jader froze. "I used to," she whispered, hesitant. "But someone warned me to stop." Chase leaned forward. "Someone warned you?" Jader nodded. "About 3 years ago, I filed a request for non-identifying records. The next week, I got a note. Typed, no return address. It said, 'Stop digging. Some graves are sealed for a reason.'" Catherine's knuckles whitened around her glass. "And you just stopped?" "I was 15, Jader admitted. It scared me. I figured maybe my parents were dangerous or powerful, so I let it go." Chase reached for her hand. "It matters," he said softly. Robert, clearing his throat, asked, "Do you still have any paperwork from the system?" Jader blinked. "Only a copy, why? Would you be willing to let us see it?" Jader shrugged. "Sure, it's at my apartment." Catherine's voice broke the silence. "I want to see it tonight." An hour later, Chase pulled up outside Jader's small apartment. The contrast from the Waverly penthouse was striking. Creaky floors, modest furnishings, yet everything was tidy, filled with small signs of care. Books stacked neatly, a laptop charging on a makeshift desk, a potted plant on the windowsill. Jader retrieved a slim manila folder from a fireproof box under her bed. "It's not much," she said. "Just intake notes and a faded medical report." Catherine opened the folder with trembling hands. The top page was a hospital report. A female infant, African American, approximately 5 days old, found abandoned near Lincoln Park Shelter, wearing a crescent moon necklace. No injuries, no witnesses. Beneath it, a social worker's note dated 2007. The infant appeared healthy. The caller's voice, female, mid-30s, educated, refused to give a name and said, "She's safer without me." Catherine whispered, almost to herself, "Oh my God, it was you." Chase looked between them, confused. "Wait, what do you mean, Mom?" Catherine's eyes didn't leave the folder. Jader stood frozen, gripping her desk. "You recognize this, don't you?" Robert asked quietly. Catherine finally spoke, her voice cracking. "That necklace. It's not just similar. It's the same. I had one just like it years ago. Before she stopped. Before the baby." Chase's voice rose in panic. "What baby?" Catherine's confession hung in the air. "I was 20. I wasn't married. I wasn't ready. My parents threatened to disown me if I kept her. I made the worst decision of my life. I left the necklace. That was all I had." Jader's voice was icy. "You abandoned me. I hated myself every day for it." Chase turned to his mother, hollow and broken. "And you never told me?" Robert finally spoke. "I found out 2 years after we married. She told me in tears. I promised never to bring it up again." Catherine whispered, "She's mine, but not ours." The room went silent, heavy with the weight of truths long hidden. That night, Jader sat on her bed, knees drawn up, clutching the necklace she once thought was just a charm. Her world had shifted in a single evening. Catherine whispered, "She's mine, but not ours." The room went silent, heavy with the weight of truths long hidden. "Ma." That night, Jader sat on her bed, knees drawn up, clutching the necklace she once thought was just a charm. Her world had shifted in a single evening. A knock startled her. It was Chase, alone, holding a small envelope. "A private DNA lab. They'll come to you. No records, no publicity, no drama," he explained. Jader finally took the envelope. "You still think I might be your sister?" "I don't know what to think," Chase admitted, "but I want the truth." 3 days later, an email arrived. 99.9% probability of a direct maternal relationship to Catherine Waverly. No paternal match to Robert. Catherine stood alone on the rooftop garden of Waverly Tower, clutching the original necklace she had hidden for nearly 2 decades. "I failed her twice," she whispered. "Once when I gave her away, and again when I met her and saw nothing but shame." Behind her, Jader appeared quietly. "You wanted to meet?" Catherine turned. "Thank you." They sat beneath the glass awning, city lights humming below. Catherine handed her a small velvet box containing a twin necklace. "One for me, one for the baby I thought I'd never see again." Jader's voice was soft. "I don't need it to know who I am, but I'll wear it to remember who you chose to become." Ma. 3 months later, the Waverly Foundation announced the Jader Lane Initiative, a scholarship program for young women in foster care pursuing tech education. Catherine stood beside Jader, not as a benefactor, but as a mother showing up the way she never had before. Chase spoke at the podium. "She's not my sister by blood, but I'd be proud if she was." Later, in the mentorship wing, Jader helped a shy 12-year-old troubleshoot a broken circuit. Catherine watched, eyes wet but steady. Robert beside her whispered, "She's not your mistake. She's your miracle." Jader wore both necklaces, symbols of past and future, pain and healing. She hadn't just found a family, she had redefined one. Sometimes, the most powerful connections aren't those we're born into, but the ones we choose to fight for.